Camera work might just be one of those things that enhances your animation from good to great. Sure, the animation itself can look fine, good even, but that doesn't mean anything if the camera work is poor and you're unable to see anything. Here are some tips to keep in mind while camming your animations. For newer people starting out, we highly recommend you use a rule of thirds grid for your camming. If you're using a VCam, you can just put it inside the camera symbol and turn that into a guide layer. Use the align window to align it to the center and parent it to the camera. There are better videos that teach you how to use the rule of thirds grid, but to put it simply, it helps align your animation. Keeps your characters in focus, lets you know if you have a lot of negative space, areas in the stage that are just empty and makes the shot feel empty, and also lets you keep track of your characters when doing camera work. Specific shot composition can help when characters are aligned to either side. Just check out the video playing. It just looks more appealing to the eye. Again, there are better videos that explain why this looks good. We're just here to let you know why you should use it. To bring more attention and negative space, having your animation too zoomed out can lead to having a lot of areas where there's just nothing. With the rule of thirds grid, you can see how much of the screen is being utilized, so try not to zoom out too much unless that is the goal, such as the shot playing right now. Now then, you might think having your animation zoomed in a lot more is better, but we're here to tell you it's not. Having your animation too zoomed in can be a terrible thing since you may be covering up something that you want people to see. Also, with lower resolution sprites, when you zoom in you won't see the whole picture, just a bunch of squares. However, zooming in can be used as a tool to lessen the workload on what you're currently animating. Take this animation. Notice how you aren't able to see the legs at all during this portion? That's because all the focus is on the upper body movement, so the camera is zoomed in just enough to only show that. Panning the camera slowly across the stage is a good way to establish the setting, but when you're camming like that you'll want to use tweens. You can rotate the camera just as you would any other symbol, but the thing about rotating the camera is that it can really cause people to be disoriented when done frequently. But when done right, it can look really good and make for some interesting shot compositions. Just try not to have it tween too quickly when rotating. Moving on to camera shake, an important thing to know when it comes to camming. You can create really good camera shake very easily by following these steps. First, make a tween. Then highlight that tween and turn all the frames into keyframes. Then on the first frame, move the camera, and depending on what you're doing, this can be a simple up and down shake or something more extreme. You need to shake the camera on every other frame. Not every frame, you start from one and then go over to the third frame. Each frame that you move for your camera shake, you're going to want to make sure that you're moving it less and less each time. This will create a smooth camera shake with proper tapering. For brief actions, you don't really need tapering, and sometimes tapering can be disorienting. Again, it's finding that balance, but make sure it doesn't suddenly stop. Remember, easing in and out is a principle. Also, using camera shakes for everything isn't the best thing to do unless it's just part of your style, since you can make it work. But using camera shake for every hit means that the hits that you really want to sell impact will lose meaning. So generally, reserving camera shakes for big hits can have a big impact when it's used. Using tweens and easing them out can do a lot for action too, and shakes are sparingly used. Combining all of these can really help with camera work. To talk about myself for a second, I'll explain how I went about camming my MBR against DJ. I do have a breakdown of it which is going to be linked in the description, but to sum it up, I went about camming this the way I did because I've been trying to implement rigging into my combat, but by shaking the camera a bunch, it's impossible to see the detail that was put in, making it pointless to actually do it in the first place. That's why I just stopped doing it for every single thing. The way I animated this puts more focus on the characters and their actions, so the camera needs to move less in order for people to actually see what's going on. If I added camera shake and a lot more movement, then it would end up like I said before. The zoom is also important here too, as I try to keep it balanced, showing just as much as I'd want you to see. Things that are important are in frame rather than just being super zoomed out all the time. This is how I cammed it because it complements how I animate, but I believe this can help out anybody who struggles to find the middle ground for camming. That's all. Well, that covers the last fundamental in this chapter. What's next? How do you develop a style? How do you make a fight scene? All of this will be answered in the next video, where we wrap things up. Until then.